So let me get into who's joining us today, and thank you all so much for joining. Renee had worked at Brand New Congress with me years ago, so she worked there, so is familiar with running those insurgent campaigns as well, and what that looks like. Then volunteered for People's Party, and now works with the Socialist Alternative, and also has an organization called Mind Your Volunteers that focuses on organizing and effective training for volunteers and positive treatment for volunteers as well. Terrence Kudney is the co-founder of Medicare for All Everywhere. He's a former independent state candidate for Massachusetts 4th District, ran last cycle, so is all kinds of familiar with running for a state house seat as an independent. Craig Catiano, who ran in Hawthorne, New Jersey for city council as a candidate in 2021 for the Green Party. Lastly, we have Justin Beth, former Green Party USA co-chair and former Bernie Sanders delegate in 2016. So we got a lineup of folks that's been there, done that, is doing the thing to talk to today. And like we said, not just presidential candidates and not just the the big names, but it's important to hear from people on the ground, to hear about their experiences so that we can better assess what's going on.
Yeah, I think we should start. Everybody focuses on 2024, but I think we should really focus on the local level first, because honestly, that's where third parties and independents have had the most success. But can you kind of talk about what made you want to run independent, and what was like the top line kind of obstacles? I assume, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party locally not welcoming you with open arms.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, running independent was a big concerted choice. I mean, the thing is, in Massachusetts where I ran, essentially we have basically a one-party system in the state. It's basically run by the Democrats exclusively. In my house in the state Senate, it's 37 Democrats to 3 Republicans. So when you talk about, power corrupting, the fact is whoever's in power, it succumbs to the problems of power, right? And so, suffice it to say, I ran against a quote unquote moderate Republican who'd been in office for 28 years, had run unopposed for 18 of those years. And so I got the sense that there was an opportunity to try something a little different, for someone for someone who was a Republican in a quote unquote liberal state, right? There's an opportunity to say, okay, there are other options out there. And what I like to say is I've always been an independent. Since I could vote, that's where I've been registered. There's an opportunity to reach more voters. One of the things that I felt was most vindicated by my campaign was I was able to speak to so many more people than I might if I had a D or an R next to my name, and got to talk to conservatives who were anxious to hear about universal health care, really wanted to see us have a universal health care system, and conservatives who wanted to see us take better care of the poor and working class, and those are things that were surprising, but really just refreshing, and really sort of indicated the idea of running as an independent. As to obstacles, I'd say one of the biggest obstacles was unfortunately reaching out to, Democratic city and town committees and having them basically say, well, we're not interested in speaking to you unless you have a D next to your name. I had several that actually were very open to the idea, which was great. But there were several more, I should say, that weren't particularly interested in hearing from an independent.
So one of the biggest barriers that we found was access to that, even for incumbent or insurgent Democratic candidates that had the D by their name, but also for independents and others that were running third party. What are some ways that you guys found around that? Was that a big barrier for you in building a race and a campaign from the ground up without, that kind of massive infrastructure behind it?
Yeah, so it's an interesting problem, like, voter lists and some of that data, even after you get voter lists, sometimes you need to get like maybe a third party software to actually manage that. And so it as an independent or a third party, minor party candidate, you got to invest those resources to, that being said, with a list and with a lot of elbow grease, you can work with Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets and, put together walk lists, for instance. So sometimes in the Green Party, we make do with very little. And, even though recently in Maine, where I'm at, I've been, with the Maine Green Independent Party since 2017, and I've done a little time at the national level. And, we actually just recently invested in getting the Secretary of State's voter information lists, which is really valuable. If we were working from old data, it was hard to knock on the right door, right? Because people move. And, so that investment was really crucial to winning a big race for city council in Portland. Andrew Trevorrow got elected in the odd year, 2021. And, talking about third parties, right? We, the Green Party, we run candidates in as many states as possible, at every level possible in every single election cycle. And it's not just every 4 years. But that data was really crucial to Anna's win. And I mean, even then we were working off of spreadsheets and hard copy printouts of walk lists. But, Anna's campaign, and she had the right strategy, is to knock on every door of likely voters, right? You can't knock on every single constituent's door. But I mean, she put in the elbow grease and it paid off in a big win. Portland City Council. We've had Greens on Portland City Council before. It's the largest city in Maine. So lots of challenges with data, but sometimes you just have to, again, do some elbow grease and, but it takes investment into getting some of those resources that you really do need to run an effective campaign.
My pathway was a little different. I'd always been politically involved growing up and a lot of issue-based stuff. I was probably 15, 16 years old when I was supporting and still trying to fight for Mumia Abu-Jamal's freedom, and kind of fell out of politics for a bit. I went to sleep during the Obama era, but I came back for Bernie. So in 2015, I started to help organize in North Jersey for Bernie. Made a lot of my contacts I have now, and I'm still friendly with, even though obviously we have this whole, debate inside-outside strategy. 2016, obviously after what happened at the Democratic convention, is when most of us decided to migrate over to the Green Party. So from 2016 on, I've been organizing, and Jordan, had a pleasure meeting you years ago at that People's Convergence Conference down in DC. So my pathway was a little different in terms of I decided to get into the party as a membership, then into the national delegate role. Assigned, on behalf to represent New Jersey as one of our 2 delegates. So a lot of national platform amendments and changes and suggestions, and attend a lot of our conventions. Then I started to get involved with New Jersey as the state co-chair. So I've had a couple terms of co-chair. So I've seen all sides of local races, state races, the gubernatorial races. So I eventually decided to run as a candidate locally. And the barrier and the reason why I went local, and obviously as a Green, is because in my town, in my ward, the Democrats didn't even bother running a candidate in 2015. So when that cycle was up in 2019, I figured they didn't run anybody. And honestly, they left it, as hanging fruit. And the way I look at it is a lot of the state and local races, you only need maybe about 100 signatures, but they'll challenge you. So you always want to get 200 or 300 or 400 just to counter that. But in New Jersey, it's a machine state. It's pretty much one party rule. But we've done well in attending actions and making coalitions with some of these other groups. So we've run very successful campaigns against Menendez with Madeline Hoffman, against Booker, and she's been our banner woman candidate for the last few years, and she's helped achieve us winning third place out of all these races, these major Senate races and gubernatorial race. So it's trying to build the state party infrastructure with exposure with our candidate, but also running real campaigns on real issues. And Madeline for sure would be at any event. Even during the pandemic, we were out at events, showing up, masked, of course, and trying to, basically be in the space. But running local, I feel, is a very important key that we're missing. And I always tell my allies in New Jersey, get involved in your town committees, get involved in your environmental commission, your green teams, things like that. Build name, build exposure first. And then when you decide to run for office, you'll have a little bit of a base, a little bit of following. So it's not like you're just dropping your name in out of the blue. And I know a lot of people get hung up on this whole national thing. There's been a few of the squad winning races out of nowhere, their names coming out of nowhere. But honestly, I think you could do just as much good locally and win if we take a little bit of different approach where you do run local. And obviously, running for office is not easy. I give consideration. I give thanks to everybody watching this has run for office at one point. It takes a lot of time and energy and, yes, money. And that's the toughest part, is asking people for money when we know our supporters are usually not able to donate a lot.
Right. And Renee, touching on what Craig was saying, because you're in Jersey, when you have this kind of idea that you could just run and compete, can you kind of talk about, in your experience with Green Party and others, have you found voters receptive to considering third parties? Because the idea typically comes from the media that these are spoiler candidates or, not serious, et cetera, but especially, I would say, younger people, working class people. What's been your experience, Green Party, MPP? Is there a larger interest, or is there a larger willingness to entertain Greens, independents, et cetera?
I think it's tough, right? Because the problem is a lot of people only know what they hear about. So if all you do is watch CNN or MSNBC or, whatever the regular local channel is, you don't even know that these people are running. You don't even know that there's an option outside of the Democrats and the Republicans. So sometimes if you're that voice of somebody who's different from those two main parties, you get a lot of weird looks sometimes when you try to talk to people about who's running that's not part of the duopoly, who this person is who's not a Democrat or a Republican, is because people just don't have those conversations. It's not supported in the media. It's not supported with, unless you're paying attention to real independent media. If you live in this area and, for example, you listen to WBAI like I do because I'm a member and I send money all the time, you might get information about, the independent candidate or the local person, because those outlets are actually looking to bring you information about everybody's that's running. They're not just focused on who the bigger person is and, who's running in the two major parties.
We've been talking mostly about the municipal races, which are extremely important. And, state level races also that, Terrence Cudney ran in for state Senate. We want to win seats at those levels. And so it really is important. And ballot access in every state is very different. And that's why I go back to saying, we really need expertise in each state to know their unique conditions, right? I appreciate you mentioning, the Green Party has been at it for a while, right? It's funny, people say we want a third party now. Well, you already have one. We've been around, predates me being part of it in joining in 2016, 2017. The Maine Greens was the first, one of the first state parties in the United States. Around the same time, I think maybe California, Alaska, Hawaii. And, so we have some history, back from the mid 80s, I would say, and it's interesting to compare the Green Party to the Libertarian Party. They've been around for about 50 years compared to the Green Party that's really been around for 25 to 30 years. Jill Stein, as a presidential candidate, talking, next level up, could have won 97% of the Electoral College votes in 2016 and was on the ballot as a Green Party candidate in, I think, 45 states. And, talking about ballot access in some of those states too, it's kind of weird. Some states have, actual registered party members. Some states don't. And also Jill was on the ballot as a write-in candidate in 3 states. So 48 states, 97% of the electoral college vote. But, I think, again, we shouldn't look necessarily at let's just focus on federal level races or the presidency or just the municipal elections. I think one advantage to running with an actual established party is that you can work with your municipal level candidates and lower level candidates, and also for state legislature. And if you have enough candidates at that level, like if all around the state, and you have an up ticket race, they can work together, and they should work together. Kind of like Craig was saying with Howie joining him in the ice cream truck. I mean, we should have those kind of up ticket candidates going and really supporting all those lower ticket races.
Something I've really noticed, a lot of the time, most people don't even know there is an election coming up. Most people don't even know who their maybe not their congressperson, but in a lot of cases, they don't know there is a primary or when the date is or who's running. A lot of voters don't know who their local council person is. Most people are checked out. Like, most people are not diehards. Can you kind of talk about that sucks. It shows voter kind of apathy, but on the other end, is that an opportunity if you're running as an independent or a third party candidate? Because there's a pool of people that if you just inform them, they might be open to you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head that there's a big difficulty of just getting the word out, not just that you are a candidate in an election, but that there is an election happening.
So with the majority being independent, how do you reach those people and, also get people registered, kind of get them politically involved in the first place so that they would even be electorally aware? As Jordan said, most people don't even know when election season is.
I mean, the reality is you have to talk to people, right? You have to have conversations with real people about what's going on. And a big reason that, in the conversations that I've had with people who do not vote, the reason people don't take the time to go out and vote is because they don't have any faith that going into a little booth and check marking or circling in or whatever you do at your polling place is going to make a difference for their material conditions. So when you have someone who is working 2 jobs, who has kids and, rent that has to be paid, like the idea that they have time to sit back and really contemplate all these things can be almost impossible. Like, people are trying to survive, right? They're trying to get day to day, get through their life, make sure they get their paycheck, make sure the rent's paid, make sure they have food on the table. It's a big ask to really try and get somebody to step back from all of those things in order to find a reason to go out and do something different. But that also is the problem, right? Is because people are so disengaged and people are so disgusted with the system that they bow out. I feel like that's intentional. My personal belief is the system has created this feeling within the majority of people that their vote doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter what they do in the polls, and therefore why are they going to bother? And by doing that, they created a huge portion of the population who has given up on this electoral process.
I've kind of thought to myself, well, why try and reinvent the wheel? As a Green, is there any thoughts on why are all these people trying to create MPP and other third parties rather than the Green Party has already had ballot access, at least on the presidential level in the majority of the states? Sure, there's been issues and corruption and other things, but at the end of the day, it is the best third party in terms of ballot access, infrastructure. I've seen some disorganization too, but is there any thoughts, Justin and Craig, as far as why don't people just try and get involved in the Green Party, take that to the next level, rather than trying to create several other parties? Craig, you haven't talked as much.
Thanks, Jordan, for the question. And that was part of why I joined the Green Party here in New Jersey. We, after 2016, let's just say right now, Jill Stein ran an amazing campaign, riding the coattails of all the fervor and energy that was going on through the Democratic primary process. And then obviously when Bernie bowed out, a lot of people were like, where do we go? What do we do next? What's the next best option? And a lot of people weren't aware, and even now are still not aware of the Green Party platform and what we've been supporting for over a decade, between Medicare for All in our platform, reparations. Obviously, Justin will tell me more things that I might be leaving out, but we went from a state party of having under 3,000 registered Greens in the beginning of 17. We had a great gubernatorial candidate ran in 2017, South Copperdale. And then we started to build, and now we're standing at 11,669 registered Greens. But yeah, there's 2.3 million unaffiliated voters in New Jersey. How do we tap that energy? And it's really still tough when you're dealing through a pandemic. And I'll be honest, the pandemic made really all the organizing efforts we did and the progress we made was literally almost killed or nearly killed off, because we were able to still have in-person conventions, and I got to meet people like obviously Jill and Howie, and Kashama Sawant came to a couple of our national meetings, and we were able to feed off the energy and talk. But Zoom is great, but it's not great for organizing as well as you think. And I think that we're still working to get the energy and get everybody back together to go out there. But yeah, what I tell everybody is, look, the Green Party is got the best platform. If you read it, basically think of it as you can mold it the way you want. If you want to work on local issues, actions, great. I'm totally for attending any action. I'm always for a general strike. And I think that's the thing. You need to have, though, the electoral end of it. So that you have to balance them both out. It's great to have all these actions and energy for actions, but you also have to have people that are willing to run for local, state, and obviously federal races to try to balance it all out.
There really is value to take, what is existing, right? If you want to elect a candidate in the near future, right? If you want to see gains in the near future, to start from scratch is extremely difficult. I mean, some people don't even know the rules of creating a new party in the state, their state. So, I want to go back to this. Kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and people's involvement. Getting them excited about not even knowing about elections, right? As Renee pointed out, people are struggling to keep food on the table. They don't have time usually to get involved unless there are various reasons why people do make time in their lives to participate in politics, but the Green Party is a working class party, right? And so we're all working our day jobs and doing what we can with the Green Party outside of that. But most Americans, most people, they don't get interested in the details of the parties, right? They just vote for candidates, and they typically don't get involved with party primaries. It depends on what state you're in and what the makeup is, like how much people pay attention. But, where people really turn out are the general elections. And that's, something I stress with the Green Party, where, Bernie Sanders was blocked from being the Democratic Party nominee and the true leftist nominee in 2016, right? But wasn't it a good thing that folks that I didn't really know about in the Green Party were really pushing Jill Stein and got her on the ballot in 48 states? If they hadn't done that, I wouldn't have had anybody to vote for in 2016.
What do you tell people who are looking at the presidential and aren't focusing on the local about strategy within and outside of the electoral system, as far as Jordan was mentioning that it's important to know these problems so that we can then go and take those problems head on?
I think one of my biggest things that I always want to remind people is I'm 46 years old, and honestly, not much changes based on who's in the White House. It often just feels like passing the baton from one person to the next person to the next person. They all just keep reviving the same bad rules. So, as much as people enjoy these conversations about whether Marianne should run or this person should run or whatever, You know, if there isn't someone who's really going to galvanize working people and get non-voters out and get people, you know, even confident or interested in participating in the electoral process, this presidential thing is just not really. And I mean, I heard what you said, Zaina, so I hate saying it out loud. Like, I just don't even know that people are going to be willing to do that in 2 years, right? Like, we're almost a year and a half from having to vote for president again. I just don't know that anyone's going to be able to convince, you know, 50 million people that they're worth, you know, trusting that they're going to make some difference. So I personally am I really feel like it's important for people to understand that the majority of rules that create chaos in their lives are local rules, right? They're rules that are set by council members, by board members, by mayors. Like, these are the people that are setting the structures up that they have to live within, you know, that are really affecting their material conditions.
To be honest, I resonate with Renee in the sense that I'm not as concerned about the presidential level. You know, I don't see that as where a lot of change is coming from, unfortunately. I wish it was. And, you know, to be sure, I will be supporting, you know, folks in the primaries that I think can move us forward in the general. But there's so much. And that's why I'm so glad that you were doing this panel, is that there's so much opportunity to, you know, move forward democracy reform, to move forward, you know, ballot initiatives that really change the game for people. And it's surprising. People are surprised when you tell them that you can do things at that level, that there's actually meaningful change to be done there. But once they hear about it, you know, you tend to see their eyes brighten up, and they might start to, you know, be a little bit more engaged in the democratic process.